Imagine a creature so strange, so utterly bizarre, that it looks less like an animal and more like a mistake. It had eyes on stalks like a hammerhead shark, but a body like a slug. It had a mouth, but that mouth was at the end of a long, swinging hose, armed with a terrifying, claw-like pincer. This isn't a creature from science fiction or a fever dream. This animal was real. It swam in our oceans, hunted in our estuaries, and for over 60 years, it has completely humiliated the smartest paleontologists on Earth. Was it a worm, a mollusk, a vertebrate, or something else entirely? Today, on Weird Animal Evolution, we are cracking open the fossil record to investigate the single most confusing organism to ever live, the Tully Monster. Buckle up, because evolution is about to get weird. To understand this biological riddle, we have to travel back in time, specifically 300 million years. Welcome to the Carboniferous period. The location, what is now Illinois, USA. Back then, this wasn't cornfields and cities. It was a tropical, muddy estuary known as Mazon Creek. The oxygen levels were high, giant insects ruled the air, and the waters were teeming with life. Fast forward to 1955. An amateur fossil hunter named Francis Tully is walking through the spoil heaps of a coal mine. He picks up a reddish stone and ironstone, concretion, and cracks it open. Inside, he finds something weird. He brings it to the Field Museum in Chicago, expecting a quick identification. But when the experts looked at it, they didn't just scratch their heads, they panicked. Paleontologists looked at the fossil and asked the most basic question in biology: what phylum is this? And the rock refused to answer. Let's look at the anatomy of this monster, officially named Tullimonstrum gregarium. It wasn't huge, only about roughly 6 to 14 inches long, about the size of a sub-sandwich. But despite its small size, it was built like a biological Swiss Army knife designed by a madman. First, the body. Torpedo-shaped, soft, and segmented, looking suspiciously like a slug or a cuttlefish. But then, look at the tail. It had vertical fins, suggesting it was a powerful swimmer, darting through the murky water with agility. But here is where things go off the rails. Across its back, it had a rigid, horizontal bar, and at the ends of that bar, cup-shaped eyes. This gave it a panoramic view of the murky gloom, a feature we usually see in advanced predators. And then, the feature that kept scientists awake at night. Extending from its face was a long, flexible nodular proboscis. But unlike an elephant or an anteater, the mouth wasn't at the base. The mouth was at the end of the stick. Armed with 8 sharp, copper-colored teeth, this claw-like mouth could snatch prey out of the mud or pluck jellyfish from the water column. So, here is the problem. In biology, animals usually fit into neat boxes. If it has a shell, maybe it's a mollusk. If it has an exoskeleton, it's an arthropod. If it has a backbone, it's a vertebrate. The Tully monster had features of everything, but belonged to nothing. For decades, it was the holy grail of paleontological confusion. It was the ultimate evolutionary orphan. Scientists argued. Friendships were tested. Was it a swimming slug? A radioactive worm? A very lost arthropod? The debate raged for 60 years. But then, in 2016, a team of researchers used high-tech laser scanning to look inside the eyes of the beast. And what they found didn't just change the story, it rewrote the entire history of this creature. They claimed to have found the smoking gun, a structure that should not have been there. A structure that suggested this soft, alien-looking noodle was actually a distant cousin of us. But could that really be true? Is it possible that the weirdest invertebrate fossil ever found was actually a vertebrate in disguise? The answer is more complicated and more shocking than anyone expected. Here is why the 2016 study from Yale University was such a bombshell. They analyzed the fossilized pigments in the Tully monster's eye structures called melanosomes. In the animal kingdom, the shape of these pigments is a dead giveaway. Invertebrates usually have one type. Vertebrates have another. The study claimed the Tully monster had vertebrate eyes. Furthermore, they argued that the light-colored line running down its body wasn't a gut, it was a notochord, a primitive backbone. Suddenly, the Tully monster wasn't a worm. It was a fish. Specifically, it seemed like the case was closed. After 60 years, the orphan finally had a family. We welcomed the weirdest creature on Earth into our own lineage. But here is the thing about paleontology. It's a contact sport. Almost immediately, other scientists shouted, "Objection." In 2019 and 2023, new teams fired back. They utilized particle accelerators to bombard the fossils with X-rays. Their conclusion: the chemical signature of that backbone didn't look like cartilage or bone. It looked more like chitin, the stuff crab shells and insect exoskeletons are made of. They also pointed out a glaring issue. If this was a fish, where was the brain case? Where were the otic capsules, the ear bones that every single vertebrate possesses to maintain balance? The Tully Monster has none of them. So, we are back to the drawing board. The vertebrate camp says the features were lost due to preservation. The invertebrate camp says the eyes evolved independently, a classic case of convergent evolution. But let's step back from the classification war for a second and appreciate just how insane evolution had to be to design this thing. Regardless of who its parents were, why did it look like this? Think about that pincer on a hose mouth. This suggests it was a precision hunter. While other predators were just swimming around with open mouths hoping to catch something, the Tully Monster was a sniper. It could keep its fragile body at a safe distance while reaching its deadly proboscis into cracks, crevices, or the muddy floor to extract prey. And that rigid eye bar. It's the exact same strategy the hammerhead shark would invent hundreds of millions of years later. Widescreen, stereoscopic vision to spot prey in the gloom. Evolution is the ultimate recycler. It loves a good design so much, it will stick it on a slug and a shark just to see what happens. The Tully Monster is a reminder that the tree of life isn't a perfectly pruned garden. It is a wild, overgrown jungle, filled with dead ends and failed experiments. This creature was a specific solution to a specific problem in the Mazon Creek estuary, and when that ecosystem changed, the Tully Monster vanished. The Tully Monster, Tullimonstrum gregarium, remains the Rorschach test of paleontology. If you look at it and see a fish, you're right. If you look at it and see a super-evolved slug, you're also right. It reminds us that for every T-Rex or woolly mammoth we understand, there are thousands of soft-bodied ghosts in the rock record that we will never find. Creatures that defied logic, broke the rules, and lived lives we can barely imagine. The Tully Monster was discovered in 1955. It has been studied by the brilliant minds at Yale, Penn, and museums worldwide. And yet, it keeps its secrets. Maybe that's why we love it. In an age where we think we know everything, nature still has the power to stump us completely. So, I'm turning the debate over to you. Look at the evidence. Is it a distorted fish, a mutated mollusk, or something totally unique that has no living relatives? Let me know your theory in the comments below. I'll be reading the wildest ones. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the strange history of our planet, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Weird Animal Evolution. Click the notification bell, because in our next video, we're looking at a prehistoric whale that walked on 4 legs. You do not want to miss that. Stay curious.